Hi, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Mary Wittenberg, and I am calling in, speaking to you from my home in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the president of EF Pro Cycling, the Tour de France World Tour men's cycling team owned by EF Education First. I'm honored to speak to all of you today as part of our sister organization, Holt Ashridge's webinar series, Leading in Times of Uncertainty. As Holt Ashridge and EF Pro Cycling, we're part of the world's largest education company. And what that means is my EF and Holt Ashridge colleagues are able to cover an immense range of your education needs, from language training, cultural exchange programs, and educational travel, right through to executive leadership development programs and digital learning for global leaders. Holt Ashridge is a triple accredited international business school with over 60 years of experience delivering executive education to global business leaders. For EF and Holt Ashridge customers, the combination of language and leadership training offers access to an even broader learning experience as well. During this webinar today, I'll be sharing insights and our lessons learned working with our Tour de France World Tour cycling team. And I'll be focusing on how to maintain and support high performance teammates during times of change. But this 45-minute session will be far from a complete learning experience. I'll do my best, but at Holt Ashridge, a range of interactive and experiential online learning. And this session, we're simply giving you a taste of the content that's delivered in Holt Online Skills virtual classes and workshops on a regular basis. So if you'd like to receive more information about Holt Online Skills or speak with an advisor, we'll include a link to the Holt Ashridge website in the chat box on the side. So let's get to it. EF Education First Pro Cycling. First, I want to share with you that our team has been in the thick of this pandemic pandemonium like many of you have. And I want to take you back to begin to that weekend of March 20th to 21st, when effectively most of the world stopped traveling. We had one bike team finishing a road race from Paris to Nice, and we had another bike team who had arrived in Cape Town, South Africa 4 or 5 days earlier to race the iconic Cape Epic mountain bike race. You see, our riders are known as World Tour road race, quote unquote, skinny tire bike riders, but there's so much more. And at EF Pro Cycling, we pride ourselves on what we call our alternative calendar, where our World Tour team gets to ride bikes of all sorts with all levels of racers, far beyond the world's best road racers. Men, women, moms, dads, and even teenagers. And we're talking about events like the Dirty Kanza, which you may have heard about. But in this case, our guys were in South Africa for Cape Epic, an 8-day, 2-person, unsupported team race with 16,000 meters of climbing. And this race had been high on the list of 2 of our famed alternative racers, Lachlan Morton of Australia and Alex Howes, the current USA road race champion from Colorado. Their experience that weekend in Cape Town reminds us of the reality of our situation. And in the end, the reminder of that weekend and that day was best said by Lachlan Morton when he said, as they were leaving, before they even had the chance to start the race, this pandemic is much bigger than sport. So what I want to do is share in the chat box a link to a video of Lachlan and Alex on that day as they pulled out of South Africa. And I'm afraid it'll buffer showing the video on this Zoom chat today, but it's there for you to watch in the future. And the main point is that's ultimately our reality. This pandemic is bigger than sport. It's about life, and it's way bigger than anything else. Like many of you, it feels like we as a bike team have been in this for a while. It was all the way back in early March that we asked to skip the iconic, otherwise super important races on our World Tour calendar in Italy. And by mid-March, it was clear that while the US had not elevated warnings about travel to France, that racing there too would soon be of concern. So where are we today? Perhaps like many of you feel we're in a place where you may feel your organizations are. This quote from Juan Margarata, one of our sport directors from Spain, captures the situation. The ship, the one that is full of big dreams, has a big hole in the waterline, but I assure you it is too strong to sink. That quote, while it feels pertinent today, actually is from last September. That was stage 5 of the Tour of Spain. Juanma said this after our team had sustained a series of bad crashes. So you see, a benefit of World Tour racing experience in times like we're going through now is that we are often in cycling in periods of intense uncertainty and challenge. Almost every race, our riders, directors, and staff face challenge and what can feel like insurmountable odds. So today, while we're all in the midst of unprecedented challenge together, I hope to share some of our learnings from our life on the World Tour. First, by way of background, how many of you have heard of the Tour de France? I hope many of you. The UCI World Tour, maybe not as many. The World Tour is a collection of the greatest professional cycling events in the world. Global cycling is a big deal sport. In fact, it's among the most global of any that I can think of. It's practically a year-round sport. 10 months a year we race. Highlights include the one-day classics in the spring, which we would normally be in the middle of, and the Grand Tours in Italy, France, and Spain that run from spring to fall. Our team will typically race in 22 countries around the world, sporting pink and representing EF. We have 30 professional riders, and while we're an American-created team, we are the most international in the pro peloton with over 17 nationalities represented. Our team behind the team includes sport directors, soigneurs, mechanics, doctors, chefs, people working responsible for our hospitality, our marketing, our social media, our PR, and so much more. We total close to 100 teammates. This is an extraordinary sport. It is stunning in that cycling is really about freedom and independence and joy and good health and lots of fun. And it's available to most everyone. At the professional level, it can also be about winning. It's often all about winning. And the history of cycling has shown when it becomes about the result first in winning at all cost, the outcome after initial success hasn't been so good. So the opportunity for this team has been helping overcome the long shadows of the past. Our team, founded by Jonathan Vaughters initially over 15 years ago, was an antidote to the era of doping. And the team has grown to be so much more, especially with EF now owning the team for the last few years. Today, we try to lead with purpose and personality as our primary goals in the way we approach every race and the confidence that results will follow. We definitely want to win the Tour de France one day, but most importantly, we want to inspire everyone. We want to inspire everybody to explore the world, to find the explorer and the cyclist in us all. We want to win and succeed at the very top of the sport by doing it right, by racing clean, by giving it our best, by playing fair, and all along the way, inspiring others. So rather than focus on results, as we built this team, we realized we really wanted to focus on our how, so that when our guys stand on the top step of a podium, they can feel good, not only about the result, but about how we got there. Our how includes trying hard to provide wholehearted support. This is a tough sport. Contracts are short. There's a reality that teammates will come and go. But while our riders and our staff are with us, we want to support them in ways we hope that can help them not only today, but we really try to be aware of their careers well beyond the time they're with us. And that's probably something you can all relate to with many of your employees. We try to keep the fun in racing. This is a key part of our how. This picture is a picture of Alex Howes and Taylor Phinney. This was days before the Tour of Columbia 2 years ago. Sure, they could have taken the third day in a row of riding 100 miles that day and preparing for the race. But instead, our directors seized on the moment for some fun and relaxation. We were riding in the hometown of our superstar, Rigoberto Urán, from Medellin, Colombia. And instead of riding another day on those beautiful roads, Rigo introduced the guys to the beauties of riding in some boats on the water. And guess what? Days later, our guys were pumped up, feeling good, and they rode incredibly well in the race, better for a bit of a break. I like a quote about us. EF Education First are renowned for standing out, whether it's due to their tendency to sign the most intellectual and unique characters in the peloton, or because of their pink and blue Rafa tie-dye style kits. We love to help our teammates be their unique selves, and that's become a big part of the how of this team, and actually a big part of who we are. And our goal every day is to open the sport and the world to everyone, to invite everyone to explore the world and become, join us in being part of it all. And we'll trade any day telling our story and spending the time signing autographs to, the bit of advantage we might get by closing the bus doors and just focusing on the race. So how are we doing as a team? Really well. We're on the rise. This photo is from exactly a year ago when our young Italian, Alberto Bettiol, 25 years old, with his great teammates, won one of the most significant events on the World Tour calendar. It's called a monument. It's so significant. It's the Tour of Flanders. That race set the tone for last year. And I'm happy to say this year, to this point of pause in the calendar, we've had the best start ever. So let me tell you about our team. They are A players. It is a group of highly motivated people working close to their limit all the time. Likely you feel the same about many of your staff and your executives in your industry. You likely have the A players. So how do we help them manage through times of challenge and uncertainty? And how do we help them be their best? One might think it's solely through the trophies, money, and fame. You might think those are the most motivating things. Sure, those are part of what matter. In the end, cycling, in my case, this is the rider's job, and they're professional athletes. But our pro cyclists are likely like many of your athletes. We find we do not have to look to the extrinsic motivators. We don't even have to push our riders to perform. Rather, the trick is to create an environment where they can perform their best and their intrinsic motivations are unfeathered. So what do we try to do? Here's where I'm going to share some of our perspectives in general about helping our teammates be our best. And I'm going to talk a bit about how it's even more important in these times of uncertainty, which are very common in cycling, but now common for all of us in the case of this pandemic. Ownership and choice is really important. In general, most people want control over themselves and their environments, and they want to have a role in determining what they pursue and how they pursue it. We try to respect that, and we concentrate our efforts in a focused, rational way and really try to exert our control where we think it gets real benefit. An example, if a rider lives at altitude and can do 100% of his training at home, we're not the team that's going to force him into a training camp at altitude to just prove we can control him and to try to force on him our way. Plenty of teams do this. It's our pragmatism at looking at a situation like that that I think is really appreciated by the riders and delivers them and helps them come to our races ready to go in body and mind and spirit. That degree of ownership over their work and getting and our effort to help them get to their results is super powerful. If we can achieve that while still giving the riders the feeling that we're standing behind them to support them, we can go really far. It's especially true when we take riders that have already raced several years in other rigid structures. We find that they really appreciate being treated as adults that they are, and that we really get the best from them and they get the best from themselves that way. In the situation of crisis, I've added this notion of choice because we have found it's been critical in situations of uncertainty and crisis to ensure our riders and our staff have a voice and they're part of committing to our decisions. In general, we support our riders and we help them, but this is a tough sport. Just like many of your jobs and careers, they're tough. There are moments that require people being able to get through the tough moments with the drive that comes from within. We find our riders learn the best on their own. This is a picture of Logan Owen. He's a 23-year-old American who generally lives in Belgium. This was his first Grand Tour he was in last September. Again, the Tour of Spain, actually. Sure, we can tell him, oh, you're gonna get through it, but it's way more compelling when he learns it himself. The more our riders feel that ownership and control, the better we find they perform. In these extraordinary times, it's important to add, as I said, not only this sense of ownership, but this sense of choice. This is a picture from Paris-Nice, the race I mentioned we were in the middle of heading into that weekend of March 21st. It was really important to ensure our riders and staff understood they had a choice in the matter of racing Paris-Nice. Well, by early March, we were clear that racing in northern and central Italy didn't make sense. Early indications at that time was, well, actually from riding from Paris to Nice, from March 8th to 15th, and a little bit later, that should be okay. That said, as an executive team, when we were looking at all the information from the CDC and the State Department in the US and looking at countries around the world, we were still concerned that things could change really fast. We decided that the riders could do the race as long as the travel advice didn't change, one, and two, that the race organizer, the ASO, producers of the Tour de France, really the best in the business, so long as they put in measures that satisfied us and our medical director. And they did. Despite all that, we still decided it wasn't worth going unless it was what our riders and our directors really wanted. It was their choice. And this was key. It remained their choice all the way through, including 2 nights before the end when USA guidance on France and travel in France changed. It was really important at that point for our directors with the team on the ground to make clear, guys, it's okay to go home. And 2 of our Americans ended up going home. And that not only was cool, that was great. And in the final days, as our directors gathered our riders, and the riders kept saying they wanted to go on, it was critical our directors gathered our staff too. And our staff were told, and these staff come from around the world, any one of you, please know, if you want to leave now, it's okay, you can leave. And as one of our directors captured well, this is only a bike race. This is only a bike race. And I think that sums up our philosophy at any time. As important as it may seem, these are only bike races. And the choice to carry on was the choice that each and every staff and rider was able to make and was their own. And I think wherever you can in this crisis and others, we have found bringing the teams in and giving them those decisions have been really helpful. Safety. I'm talking here not only about physical safety, but psychological safety. We find we get our best from our riders and our team because we have a really strong culture within the team about how we treat each other. It's not something we have laminated and put on the wall, but it is kind of a code. It's deep inside our culture. People feel safe because we enable them to say what they feel, and we enable them to have a voice. And basically, it's our job as leaders as executives and as sport directors on the ground, for those who lead our teams when they're out there racing, it's to keep that going on a daily basis. And it's also true, the physical safety, of course, is incredibly important in a sport like ours that is full of risk. And the guys know, and the staff know, we will always do our very best to keep them safe. Resilience and focus. Resilience is really important. This is a sport where we lose way more than we win. And that may be the case in a lot of your businesses. Like anyone in sales, you tend to lose a lot more than you win. And in our case, our riders will race some 90 days a year. They'll be lucky to get a handful or two of wins a year. Or, in our case, I think we won 20 times last year, but still, that's out of 90 days. So every race, they've got to gear up to get ready to go for the goals. And yet, they got to manage the fall back down later that day after even their best wasn't good enough on that day. So developing that muscle of resilience is very important in a sport like cycling. That ability to come back the next day grows over time and is key. And for us, balancing resilience and safety and choice and shared goals is what's important when things go wrong. Here is an example of incredible resilience. This is a picture of Lawson Craddock, young American who crashed a few years ago on the very first stage of his first Tour de France. Lawson could have easily stopped. Our team advised him, please, the medical director was saying it's okay to go, but please, you don't have to finish this race. He would hear none of it. And we knew from a medical perspective that despite a broken shoulder, if he really wanted to do it, he could do it, and we could support him. And the decision was made that that's what we would do, and that the whole team's focus changed. In fact, a shared goal became help Lawson get to not to be part of all of us winning the race that year for the team, but it was to have Lawson finish that race and display for others what resilience can do to get one through a tough time. And actually, and this is very relevant to all of us now, maybe we can do some good for other people in the middle of what is and was a crisis for the team at that time. And Lawson went on to raise a lot of money for his home velodrome in Houston, Texas. And I added here focus because, like for many of your businesses where change is a constant, maintaining focus as leaders and helping our staff do that and our riders do that in our case is really important. A recent example for us was the Tour de France last year. Stage 19 of what was 21 stages was to end at the top of the Col d'Iseran, the highest paved mountain pass in the Alps. Beautiful July time of year, right? Well, a freak snowstorm came in right at the top of the Col d'Iseran as the racers were going for it at this key point in the Tour de France. That ice storm made it way too treacherous for all the riders in the Tour de France to finish. And there were reports of a landslide coming in. Total chaos. The riders were stopped only miles from the finish, stopped mid-climb in the Tour de France. Our directors did an amazing job. And what they knew immediately was the importance of helping our riders focus. Our riders, together with riders from all the teams in the World Tour, were suddenly in a situation of not knowing what was going to happen. There were still a few stages of the Tour de France to go. What our riders did then is what I realize is so important today. They immediately got our riders in a safe space. And then with 24 hours, not less than 24 hours, but a lot of hours to the next day's stage, when there were a lot of questions and rumors were flying as to what was going to happen, our directors basically told our riders, just leave what's going to happen to us. Focus on recovering from the stage, focus on dinner, focus on getting a good night's sleep, and we'll tell you and keep you informed. We promise you will be the first to know when we know what's going to happen for the rest of this race. And it wasn't until 45 minutes before the stage the next day that our directors informed our riders that the stage was going to be shortened dramatically And basically it'd be the last race that would determine, the last stage that would determine the Tour de France that year, last year. But what we saw was that directors stepping in, let us deal with the uncertainty. Just focus on your healing, your recovery, and trust us. And they did. And our end of the Tour de France was a strong one. We're in a sport full of risk, as I said earlier. Lots of accidents happen, and sometimes accidents will be far worse than usual. Last September, we had one of those days when at the Tour of Spain, as I mentioned earlier, we had several bad crashes. We lost our 3 top contenders in one day. So of the remaining teammates, it was a brutal reality, right? And what I want to highlight here is the importance of the leaders around them. And not only was it the spirit of Juan Margarata and Ken Van Mark, the directors on the ground that helped lead, but the road captain, Mitch Docker, was also critical in helping our teammates get through that time at the Tour of Spain. And what I want to encourage you now is don't be afraid to rely on your deputies. We're doing that. EF Pro Racing, it's not just the leaders, it's our deputies, and it's the teammates along all the way through our team that can really help manage through these difficult times and display the resilience and the focus that we need throughout the team. Shared goals. This is really important. I've talked about ownership and safety and resilience. What else really helps our team be their best in a normal basis and in times of uncertainty, and definitely in times of crisis like this? It's their shared goals. As I said earlier, every day our riders ride with real purpose, and they have different goals every single stage and every single race. But what is always common is their shared goals. Cycling, and you may not realize it, it's incredibly team-based sport. You know, you see one individual standing at the top of the podium, but it's always the result of a team effort. It's quite a selfless sport, actually, in many ways, or at least it is on our team, and I think it's part of what makes us best. And I have been wowed by the power of the team spirit in times of crisis in our team. The picture on the left, and it tells a lot. In 2017, the night before stage 9 of the Tour of Spain, once again, just prior to EF buying the team, in the previous night to the stage, an email had been shared with the riders, releasing all of them from their contracts. The challenge that following day and the rest of the race was how to get the riders to get through the remainder of the race, knowing that the team was in dire straits and in need of another investor and a funder. And what happened was the directors did an extraordinary job, and the riders stepped up like you can't believe. That was a day when the directors said, guys, we understand. We don't know that the team will survive. It's okay. You need to race for yourselves. We will understand. You're all going to be looking for new contracts. And the directors asked them to share their thoughts, and each rider raised their hand. It was a physical action that made a real set a tone for the team, I would say, and a physical action where they one by one said, we will race for Mike Woods this day. That was our plan, and that's what we want to do. And sure enough, Mike landed on the podium that day. And sure enough, EF happened to come along and save the team. But those guys looked out for each other in a time of crisis when they could have looked out for themselves. The same on the picture on the right, when I mentioned this was Paris-Nice, and this is Sergei Higuita, one of our young superstars from Colombia. And a big deal would be a podium finish at Paris-Nice, one of the biggest races in the world. And we knew the riders were in, as I said, at the time of crisis. The staff, you know what their response was when they were given the chance to leave by the directors? They wanted Higuita to have the chance to land on the podium. That's what several of them said, and it was worth another day of racing for them. Our shared goals today mean something really different, right? Our riders were planning to be racing in Belgium, Paris-Roubaix, a big race in Paris. One of the Cobble Classics was supposed to be the Saturday. But our new shared goal is carrying on for our fans and supporting our partners like Cannondale and POC and Rafa. And so we have a brand new season. So what's getting the team through now is you can go to our website at EF Pro Cycling. We're now racing indoors. So there's a whole calendar of all the races that we're now participating in, and many of them are more rides than races, but we're showing up for our fans. And it's this shared goal that is really uniting the team right now. Sure, we're not racing outside. In fact, our riders in Spain aren't even riding outside, and in many parts of the world, but they're united in their effort to be there for our fans and for our partners. Joy, even in these times that are tough, it's important to keep part of who we are. And I'm sure it's true for a lot of you. We like to have fun, and ensuring we're the best in the world. You know what? Intense athletes like to have fun too. And in a sport where every watt of power and every ounce of weight can matter, as really our lead sport director, Charlie Regilis, likes to say, you know what? You'll find we prioritize a smile over a watt. It's not all sports science, it's not all clinical, and it's not all analytical. It's fun and deeply fulfilling. And we find providing some joy is critical to the satisfaction and fulfillment of our riders and helping them be their best. And the same holds true for our staff. And I know joy can feel like a fuzzy word, but it's actually like this great source of energy in our team. And, you know, sometimes for us, it's more about the things as leaders we don't do than the things we do. And you won't find us come down hard on our staff and our riders about things that we can be tolerant about, even like staying up late and playing cards when, you know, maybe a little bit more rest would fit with a textbook approach to what would be ideal for racing. But we find what keeps our riders smiling and happy is usually really what's best for them. And even now, you know, in crisis, what's most important, these guys are in a situation like many of your staff. They're locked down. This is unlike anything they've been through before. And so what we're finding is communication is really important. And it goes both ways, actually. And you know, I see the spirit among our sport directors, and they're getting some laughs about Charlie's brand new haircut, where basically he's almost bald these days. But it's the things that bring a smile to our staff and our riders that really can make a difference. And I bet it's true for many of you as well. On a personal note, I have found another piece of advice really helpful these days. I'm an optimist by nature, and I appreciate this advice that I heard from Mike Golub from the Portland Timbers. He leads the business there, and that's an MLS, Major League Soccer team here in the USA. And this comes from when he was reading the book by Jim Collins. Many of you have probably heard of the book Good to Great. And it's a story of the Stockdale, what's called the Stockdale syndrome. And James Stockdale was a former Vietnam War prisoner of war, a captive in the war for over 7 years, United States. Ultimately, he became vice president candidate of the United States, actually. But this quote, to me, summarizes an approach I need right now as a leader. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end. We will. And it's what we can never afford to lose, that faith and that optimism. But we've got to balance it with the discipline to confront the brutal facts of our current reality, whatever that may be. In summary, how do we help our riders be their best in ordinary days and in a sport where uncertainty is an inherent part of it, and in these unprecedented times? For us, these have been the basics that have helped us through the ordinary times, and I'm finding there's some of the basics that are really helping us now. In closing, I want you to know this is a moment that we're all in together. And I hope that you take some comfort in that. And I want you to know that we here at EF Pro Cycling and with Ashridge and all the EF world here at EF Education First, we're really wishing the best to you and all of your teams, and are here to support you too, at least in spirit. So I'm now going to have the chance, thanks for listening, to take a few questions. And thanks for asking them. Let's go through a few of them. And let's see here. I'm going to choose one. I'm going to read this, and I'm going to be answering at the same time. Thanks, Dylan. Things are tough at times for your team, and every week I try something different, but how do you keep them from feeling motivated? This week it all fell flat and I struggled to keep their chins up. We hear you, Dylan. It is a week-by-week thing. In many ways, I think this time is a day-by-day thing, actually. And again, I think probably the best advice I have is share that responsibility and know that people are going to be in different places at different times. A good example yesterday, Simon Clark, one of our riders, he and some of the others, actually they on their own got all the riders together on Zwift while we're doing a lot of indoor racing for our fans and with our partners. They just got themselves together, and you know what? They needed that. And it's just trying to have your people who are going to have their different highs and lows, just rely a little bit on each other to find new ways to lift each other up. And I do think that, and also very much thinking about other people, which looks like it's going to lead to another question here. Salim, thanks for your question. You say it's a good reminder, timely reminder that we humans are always better driven by greater purpose than material rewards. Most organizations and individuals here on the call will probably make it through the storm, but we would benefit from some suggestions on how to help the weaker sections in society make it through to the other side. I hear you. This is a really important time for compassion. We will all get through this one way or another. Our world's not going to look the same. Our personal lives probably won't look the same. But we'll be lucky as we will, the vast majority of us, get through this. And so I think one of the ways right now is how do we help everyone else get through this, right? And for us, what that means is at this time, how do we keep people moving? Because even being inside, and this is why having staff in Spain and riders in Spain, where they literally can only walk to the corner, one family member a day to go to the market, we're doing all we can to help people moving. Not everyone has a bike at home. So, if you look at our Instagram, we're showing some other exercises that one can do. We're trying through Instagram Live and otherwise to help people think of ways to keep moving. And whether it's even, lifting, one of our staff members was working out with a can of beans the other day, just trying to lift a little bit of weight and get a little bit of motion in. But we're also thinking about what can we do, also obviously encourage people who can get outside by themselves to ride their bikes. But also we are spending now time as a team of what efforts might we be able to participate in raising needed funds and to do some other efforts around helping those that are going to be in greatest need during these difficult times. And I do think that that comes from a place of helping others. And I do think that purpose gives us all a lot more drive in these times. And when we can think about being part of a whole instead of just our individual selves, it helps immensely. And that's actually what racing on a bike team's about all the time. It's rarely about ourselves and much more about helping ourselves actually by helping others. And that's certainly true now. I'm going to scroll to, I think we have one more, maybe another question or two. How do you track the activity of the team? Actually, that's one of the things I think that's probably a little different about our team is we don't do a lot of top-down tracking at all. For us, tracking is checking in. It's a quick call. It's a quick Teams chat. It's a quick thumbs up on a Instagram live. It's really connecting with our staff and our riders through sometimes directly. We're not big on hierarchy, but certainly through managers and others who are responsible for people day to day. But it's not very top down. Let me see what else. Hi, Mary. Thanks for the presentation. This is Chris. Hi, Chris. Would you believe there's a difference between a pro cyclist and an usual office staff member in terms of intrinsic motivation? Great question. Not always. I think all kinds of people vary in their degree of intrinsic motivation and what their triggers are for intrinsic motivation. But I believe we ultimately all have those things that motivate us inside. We may need different levels of support to get there. I work with superstars who are incredibly driven, who one's in charge of hospitality and relationship management, and others in charge of finance. And, I see a lot of that same drive. And, I'm not saying everybody is motivated to the same degree, but I definitely don't think it's limited to our pro cyclist. So I think all of us, especially at this time, if we can help everybody find that intrinsic motivation to get through these times, what we're going to find is, as incredibly challenging as this moment is, we're going to emerge stronger. And ultimately, all of our teammates who have been through this and will get through this in all of our companies, they will have an experience of a lifetime that will prove to them that they can get through really difficult times. In a much easier way, we say that about finishing a bike race or running a marathon. You realize that persistence applies in other areas of life. Well, this pandemic is way beyond any of that. And there's going to be a strength that will be deep inside all of us that will come from getting through this. And the more we can be there and help our teammates through it all, the better off we'll all be. So that will be something everybody will take with them as a positive from all this, that will help them in other areas of life in the future. And especially with our kids, who will be here for many decades longer than the rest of us. So I really want to thank all of you for joining us today. And if you want to learn more about Holt Ashridge, and I hope you do, please look in the chat and please help us be there to help you learn. I'm certainly going to tap in for more myself. And check us out at EF Pro Cycling. Come join us and check out our social handles. And we thank you for your support. And I personally thank you for joining us today, and let us know how we can help. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.